Hi again. We're only about 10 days or so from Christmas, so I thought much better to talk about my Christmases of years ago, um, as opposed to talking about politics and all those boring other things when our minds are preoccupied with the festive season and many other things. Now, I want to take you back to a time before lights, before telephones, before the fridge, the Hoover, colourful Christmas presents, the mobile phone, uh, electronic gadgets, to a time when I grew up, which was in the second half of the 40's, just after the end of the Second World War, when life had been difficult for people. And I lived in a village called Foelgastell near Cefneithin, which was not too far away from Swansea, that had been through a terrible blitz. Not many would remember that, obviously, but I've read about it. Now, these days we have Christmases like no other, and it doesn't seem to end. It never ceases to amaze me how much is spent, the extravagant nature of it, and the excitement of the whole thing. Now, I was brought up in a totally different environment. My Christmas mornings would have been maybe a wooden wheelbarrow as a present, or a wooden horse with the wooden wheels that my father would have made, because he was a carpenter. That was the sort of presents that there were, because it was not a time when there was plenty. Rationing was still on. Food was rationed. Tinned fruits were rationed. Petrol was rationed. Not that there were many cars in Cefneithin and Foelgastell, mind, at the end of the 40's. I think the first car I ever saw travelling through the village would have been around 1951, 1952. So that's the period I'm talking of. We would get up on a Christmas morning and my mother would light up the oil lamp, because we didn't have electricity. Would have had to make sure that there was water available in the urns, which we would have had to collect from a well about 400-500 yards away. Coal fire, of course, and things of that kind. And another important thing by the time I was 2-3 years of age was chapel at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, that wasn't missed. Everyone who was a member of the chapel in Peniel would go to a Christmas morning service at 6 o'clock in the morning. Forget the presents, forget everything else. Going to chapel at 6 o'clock in the morning was important. Things improved slowly. Rationing gradually came to an end. We got electricity to the house, maybe somewhere around 1947. Then water to the house even, around 1948-49. So there was a gradual improvement as time went on. But that was the type of Christmas it was. I went to school probably, about 1946, 1947. And I well remember making Christmas presents and making Christmas decorations for the house. They usually ended up, most of you who are of a certain age will remember, paper chains. And we would stick them together. And gosh, my mother used to think what a great decoration it was to have a string of paper chains decorations in the house. Christmas cards? Hardly ever saw one. We relied a lot on each other in the community. People survived after the war in the rationing periods because we lived in a village and half my family was farming. So we didn't really go without for eggs, bacon and meat and things of that kind. In fact, we had our own chickens. We had our own pigs, 2 or 3 pigs in a pigsty. I won't describe to you the day that we were, the paraphernalia around killing the pig for meat for the rest of the year. Now that was an event in its own right. But that was the society. Was it a happy Christmas? Well, I don't really remember it as such. it was rather dour. I was an only child, so maybe that accounted for it as well, of course. I did not have any other children to play with in that period. But it was certainly a pleasant time. And we had to find our own food for Christmas in terms of the chicken, because we had chicken pen, plenty of chickens. There was an event once when I killed a goose. Can you imagine that? My father always would buy or rear a young goose middle of the summer in readiness for Christmas. Well, my parents would have gone out this particular day, and I went out to the garden. We had a large garden, the vegetable garden, and there was this goose wandering about, and it started hissing towards me. You know how geese tend to do? Well, I picked up a kidney bean stick, a long kidney bean stick, and hit it on the head. Down it went like a stone. And my uncle, who was living with us at the time, decided, well, you must have killed it. So the only thing to do is to make sure it's dead, because we're only about 4 or 5 days from Christmas. This has got to be salvaged somehow. And he chopped his head off there and then, whatever people think of those sort of things. But that was the community of the time. No electricity, no lights, very few presents. I remember the first fridge coming. It would have been about 1954. First washing machine, about the same time. Carpets? Good gosh, what was carpets in the 1940s? It was linoleum. So there was no need for the Hoover back then. Now that was the society. Different world now. And I've had to cope in my own mind over the last 30, 40 years with the Christmases for my own children, the family, and everybody around. And to be honest, it's posed a bit of a problem for me, because I've never got excited about Christmas, because from my childhood memory, Christmas was not much to be getting excited about. It was as I said, it was a strange, difficult time for people back in the end of the 40s. So what do I do now when I write my memoirs and I'm writing the story of my life? I try and rationalize it all. Well, what was it? Why is it that I don't get too excited about the Christmases like other people do? So I rely a lot on books like this, the book of Stephen Peters on mind management and the power of negative emotion. Try to understand where I came from. Try to understand where my mind has been and where is it now, and rationalizing, well, that is not the way you should behave in relation to Christmas. Another big event, of course, that is in the memory, big time with me, was the 1947 snow. Now, there's only been 2 serious snow times in the last 100 years. That would have been 1947 and 1963. So anybody under the age of, say, 40, 45 would have no recollection, even of 1963, I suspect. Anyway, 1947, we woke up one morning before Christmas, something of that kind. As usual, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Both my father and my grandfather worked in the coal mines. Open the curtains, white. The snow was as high as the window level in the house, the 1947 snow. My father and grandfather we had to dig ourselves out of the house, and we lived on a small road, about 200 yards before getting onto a main road, which is a B road in today's terms, but it was called the main road back in those days, big road, in the late 40s, early 50s. And there were people walking and struggling through snow at hedge level. If you don't believe me, you can go Google, go online, clock in the 1947 snow, and you will see the whole story. And the snow lasted for months. In fact, my recollection is it lasted somewhere until March, April. it took that long for the snow to disappear. That has lived as long in my memory as my early Christmas times, to be honest, as my early Christmas presents was the snow of 1947. And the other thing associated with Christmas for me then as well was big thing with my grandmother especially was King George VI and his Christmas message on a small box radio. Like the Queen does it today, her father used to do it from around 1940 apparently. Everything had to stop. Whatever was on had to be a full stop to listen to King George VI and his Christmas message. So there we go. I just thought I'd give you a little story of that kind. Christmas is in the end of the 1940s.